Good evening and welcome to the August 2nd Council of Governments regular meeting. We'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first item on the agenda this evening is the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial and will be acted upon by the council at one time without discussion. Any council member, staff member, or interested party may request that an item be removed from the consent for further discussion. Do we have any council members asking for a consent agenda? Any staff? Any public? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? Moved by Councilmember Munides. Second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Herman. All those in favor?
Aye.
Approved 6-0. 5-0. Our next item is the public comment. Public comment is limited to 5 minutes per person. Comments shall be limited to items that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council and not on the posted agenda. Do we have any public comment this evening?
Ben Stopper, District 5. I would like to bring or make the COG board aware of an issue they have been working on for a few years now. There's been an application for a grant to fix the bottlenecks and put in sidewalks going to Valley Springs Elementary. We have a conglomerate of parents that are very passionate about this, so we're here to help mitigate this. We don't need them in here getting passionate on you. There's been an issue with some of the parking near the school being closed down, so the bottleneck has been closed down harder. We have many kids coming and going from the school that are walking, and it's really to the point where we believe it's beyond the type of grant you originally applied for. It's something that's health and safety at this point. And I think Sherry Roosh could probably explain a little more exactly how that applies. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Sherry Roosh, and I am a school board trustee for Calaveras Unified School District. I'm here also as a District 5 resident. I have been trying to help with the sidewalk for quite some time, been through a few different cycles of safe routes to school and so forth, and we have not been able to get a grant to get the funds for this. I want to thank Jeff Krovitz, our Public Works Director, for arranging a meeting that we're going to sit down and try to find some monies to get this to happen. Currently, there are almost 500 students at Valley Springs Elementary, and over half of them walk. So I would encourage you, if you have never done this, either at 7 o'clock in the morning or at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, just to stand in front of the Valley Springs Elementary School and watch the children come in and watch the cars. It is amazing that a child has never been hit. There is no safe way. They walk anywhere they can, in the ditch, in the middle of the road, on the side, whatever they can. My other concern is that if we ever have to evacuate the school, the Covenant Community Church just down the street is our safe haven, and there's nowhere for those kids to walk. So Mr. Krovitz has designed a great design, making some streets some one-ways, putting a sidewalk in, making our pickup and delivery a little bit different, and I think that it will be protective of our students, which is the most important thing. So if we can get this agendized somehow, we can have that conversation, and we can get this moving forward, I would be very, very appreciative, and so would all the parents. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Hi, Cliff Edson, San Andreas, and you can tell she's still an elected official because she's politically very nice. I was a supervisor in that area for 4 years. I tried for 4 years to get funding for the safe routes to school there, and didn't get a whole lot of cooperation from COG for various reasons. So, the last time that we talked about a possible grant was about a year ago, and made it sound like it was going to happen. And then, politics is real big in this county, so it probably didn't happen for that reason. I see a lot of, in our county, you would think that kids should be number one. The safety of kids should be number one, especially going to and from school. And I'm seeing a lot of other projects that are happening through COG, and they're not paying attention to that school. And see, I don't have to be politically correct anymore. So I'm a little upset about this, because I've sat there and watched these children come to that school, walking out in the middle of the street on a 2 and 3 lane street, one way. People passing each other because they're in a hurry or whatever in front of this school, right? And Sherry had a real good suggestion. Go down there and check it out. It'll scare the crap out of you. And it is amazing that nobody's got hurt so far. So I would appreciate if you could finish the job and find some funding for that, so that Jeff Krovitz has a real good plan. And let's put our children first, shall we? Thank you.
Is there any further public comment? Seeing none. Our next item of business is item number 5, the presentation of the draft 2017 Calaveras County RTIP update. Ms. Collins.
All right, good evening, Council. Hopefully you can hear me. We're bringing to you tonight a presentation of our public draft of our regional transportation plan. The RTP is, one of the core functions of the COG and is our main planning document. It's updated every 4 years, and so our last regional transportation plan was adopted in 2012. We began this process last spring in 2016 and awarded a contract to Green Dot Transportation Solutions, who I'll introduce in one moment. Throughout the process, we worked closely with the Technical Advisory Committee. We reached out to our neighboring counties and tribal governments. We conducted 3 community workshops, did an online survey, and now we are finally kind of towards the end of this process. We just released a public draft this last week, along with our agenda, looking for public comment and review from the public and the council. And then we will bring back to you a final draft, I believe in October. I think in my staff report I said September, but we have to work through our environmental document and 30-day public noticing for that document, so it'll probably be October. And so now I'll introduce Jeff Schwein with Green Dot Transportation Solutions to kind of walk us through what's the purpose of the RTP and what's in the plan.
Great. Thanks, Amber. My name is Jeff Schwein. I have a small consulting firm called Green Dot Transportation Solutions, and for the past year, we've been developing the regional transportation plan, policies, the project lists, and the financial components, revenue projections, and then aligning them all so you come up with your policy, your document that guides transportation projects in the region for the next 20 years. So it's not just the consultant that's doing this work. So we sit down with the Technical Advisory Committee. We sit down with the community. We've done numerous outreach meetings and had public feedback. We've got some online resources for reviewing documents and getting notifications of meetings. And this is a pretty good collective effort to look at the long-range transportation planning in Calaveras County. The one thing about a regional transportation plan is it's required if you're pursuing federal or state transportation dollars. If you want to use those dollars on a project, your project has to be in the regional transportation plan. So that's sort of the overall view of what a regional transportation plan does. So in the state of California, you know, you guys are very familiar with local agencies. We have regional agencies, which you're familiar with because you are one. And then it goes from there to state and federal. Basically, those are the levels that we commonly work with. And regional planning in California for transportation purposes is divided up into two different levels of organizations. One's called a metropolitan planning organization, and that's for regions with large urban areas. And sometimes they collect the counties, various counties, and conglomerate it down to one metropolitan planning organization. The other type of organization is called a Regional Transportation Planning Agency, which the Calaveras Council of Governments is. It's for smaller regions, and typically they're based within a county boundary. So there's 26 regional transportation planning agencies in California. How the regional transportation plan coordination works is we build the transportation plan within the county, but we also reach out to the state and to neighboring counties and tribal entities, anyone who might have an interest in what you're doing here in the county. So there's a lot of statutes and guidance that we follow, the main one being the 2017 Regional Transportation Plan Guidelines. These are developed by the California Transportation Commission, which is the state organization that sort of manages and helps define and distribute transportation funding programs and dollars. Some other ones here that we follow when we develop a regional transportation plan. So this document will be updated every 4 years in the region. Some agencies can do a 5-year update, but this region does it every 4 years. And like I said before, it's a 20-year planning document. So basically you develop your list of projects and your revenue projections for 20 years, but in 4 years you're going to relook at that list, and anything that you've built and projects that have been completed will come off the list, new projects will come on, and within that 4 years you can always amend your regional transportation plan, and also you can take projects from a long-term list, and if that project happens to get a special type of funding, or if that project all of a sudden becomes a priority, then you can move that into the shorter range list. That's not a problem. It's just some administrative and some work with the COG. So the projects that are in here, the types, are local roadways. This includes capital projects as well as maintenance projects, state highways, bridges, bicycle and pedestrian projects, aviation projects, and transit projects. All the transportation components. If you had an Amtrak train coming through here, it would do that too, but we don't. So there's some required elements. Mentioned them once. The policy document, or the policy element, the action element. The action element has the actual projects in it, and the financial element. So some assumptions that we discussed with the community, some of them were carried over from the old regional transportation plan, which was last done in 2012. The travel mode, automobile is still the primary mode of travel in Calaveras County. I'll show you some numbers in a little while that shows that mode split. Bicycle and pedestrian transportation is on an increase. We've seen this through some of the data collected from the Census Bureau and some of the projections from the state. So we can see that there is an increase in bicycle and pedestrian use in Calaveras County. So there's some projects in there to address that. Truck traffic is increasing. That's just a fact. It comes from the county's traffic counts, the state's traffic counts. There are trucks on the roadway in your county, and that number is going up. Recreation travel is still very strong. We don't have actual numbers on how many folks are just moving through the county or coming here to recreate and don't necessarily live here, but recreation travel is certainly very strong in this region. You guys know this, so a lot of the projects take that into consideration when the local agencies are developing them, when Caltrans is developing them, and when we're collectively developing the projects. So the population growth, we get our numbers from the Department of Finance for the most part. There's some other resources as well, such as the census, and the growth has been projected to be about 1%. It's been steady like that for a little while, and it's projected to continue on. Emergency preparedness came up as a critical issue in the region, specifically for wildland fires. So that's something that was taken into consideration when developing the projects that go into this plan. You guys don't need to read everything on here, but I want to talk to you a little bit about funding. So this is our main constraint for transportation for a lot of things, but for transportation certainly we have a serious funding challenge. I'll show you some of the numbers that show the gap between what we need and what revenue we have available, and that gap is huge, significant. It's like that throughout the state, and so so there's been some measures to try to mitigate some of that difference between what we need and what we have. But the top up here, I just wanted to run through a couple of the resources that we get. So you'll see in here, there's about $370 million worth of projected revenue for this region for transportation projects over the next 20 years. And I just want you to get a little bit of an idea of where some of that funding comes from. So the state-based excise tax right here is basically a tax on gasoline. It's a base rate. It's 18 cents per gallon. Then we have the excise, the price-based excise tax. That is a separate tax on the price of gasoline. So it's not just a fixed rate for the gallon of gas you're putting in there. The federal fuel tax is 18.4 cents a gallon, and we pay that. It goes to the feds. It comes back through the federal highway bill funding that comes to the state. So most of it comes back, not all of it. Another significant resource is the truck weight fees and the sales tax on diesel fuel. These revenue sources go, you can see all of these kind of drop down through the various programs, and then at the end they come out, and these are the different modes that they help fund. Certainly we have a 1/4 cent general sales tax in the state, and that goes to transportation through the Transportation Development Act. And the region has 2 small local tax measures for roadway maintenance. So those are in place. In the more urban regions, there's some tolls for funding bridge maintenance, and then this Proposition 1B, which was some years ago. We're still spending the money that was generated from that proposition. Over here on the right, we have some newer programs from the cap and trade revenue source, and some of these programs would kind of be hard to compete with the urban areas for a rural agency, such as the Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities, and then of course the transit and intercity rail. But they are there and eligible. And there is one program, the LC Top money, that comes from Cap and Trade, and you guys take advantage of that. You'll see that. So these are some charts that I kind of just went to. This just is showing the breakdown of the excise taxes and the price-based tax. So one of the challenges that has been studied and pretty readily identified is the difference between, we're calling it revenue loss, basically. So because vehicle miles traveled, because people are driving more, they're putting more wear and tear on the roadways, on our facilities, on our transit systems, everything. So that is going up, vehicle miles traveled. The consumption of fuel is going down based on the fuel economy of the vehicles we're driving these days, and the drive to reduce our vehicle miles traveled. You know, in most areas, we're trying to get people out of their car and onto an alternative mode of transportation. So, but the problem there is that we're not generating tax on the gasoline that we used to. So there's this gap between the consumption and the vehicle miles, and that gap is shown in revenue loss and the value of the revenue that we're generating. So in order to somewhat combat that, SB 1 was passed this spring, and Senate Bill 1 is a really big boost to our transportation economy. There's $1.5 billion a year that's going to be going to local streets and roads just for maintenance. This is statewide, so the county will get their share of that. Well, maybe not their share, but not everyone would agree with that statement. But you will get a piece of that through the normal funding distribution programs. With Senate Bill 1, that's one thing that they tried to do, was to have it be so we didn't develop new bureaucratic programs for this funding. It's basically going to flow through the existing programs and sort of beef up the support for those. $100 million a year additional to what's existing now to the active transportation program, which is a pretty robust program. Might be a good one for the folks in Valley Springs to look for their Safe Routes to School projects. $1.9 billion a year going to the state highway maintenance and operations, which is fantastic. And then the State Transportation Improvement Program, which is a program that this county uses as a robust component of funding their roadway capital projects. And we've seen that take a dive over the last 10 years, maybe 8, but certainly that program has been beefed up with support from Senate Bill 1. So a couple things here that I wanted to point out with Senate Bill 1 is this is how the dollars are going to flow down through the existing programs. So there's a 20-cent increase on diesel excise tax. That funding is going to flow down into this program right here, which is for maintenance and rehabilitation. So 50% of that is going to go to the shop, and 50% is going to go to local streets and roads. So this is $1.15 billion starting in fiscal year 18-19 to local streets and roads, which is great. The other one that is important is the funding coming to transit is getting a boost, and that's going to be really important for any new transit programs that you guys have in place. There was a slight gap in the needs for your current transit system and the projected revenue. So this will help close that gap. So some stats on the active transportation program. Because this is a robust program and you guys have a lot of bicycle and pedestrian projects in the regional transportation plan, I thought that I'd point this out. Because there's something that I'd like to tear off in a second. So the active transportation program is available for bicycle and pedestrian projects, and the rural agencies have been getting short shrift to the funding. So they've been massaging the guidelines and helping the rural agencies better compete for the funding by just moving the programs around a little bit and doing different metrics for evaluating the proposals that are put in for projects. So, but you can see on this chart right here, the rural's got $26 million worth of projects, and the urban's got $131 million worth of projects. And this is the 2014 or this is cycle 3 of the active transportation program. We're on cycle 4 right now. There were 10 projects in rural areas throughout the state of California. It's not a lot. When an agency like Calaveras Council of Governments puts in an application, it better be really good to be able to make this 10 project cut. There were 40 in the urban areas. So they've massaged the guidelines a little bit. I have a lot of faith that the next round will be more kind to the rural areas. And but the one thing that I do want to point out is that project development is really critical here. If you aren't counting your existing users for bicycles and pedestrians, you're not going to get a grant, right? If you're not doing it now, if you're not developing your project right now with community outreach and showing that you have huge support for this project, everyone in the community needs this project. And show safety concerns and really develop your grant application and your project all year round. Those are the projects that are going to get funded. So there are some ways to improve your funding that comes into the region, and certainly this was going to be a huge discussion prior to Senate Bill 1 for the region, but you guys always need to continually be talking about the shortage of revenue for our roadways and be championing for that at the state and the federal level. A lot of agencies, a lot of the urban areas, they just tax themselves. They say, we don't have enough money to fund our transit systems, we're going to tax ourselves. They call these self-help counties. And rural agencies usually have a challenge with this, but in the next 20 years, we're going to see a lot more rural agencies passing self-help taxes. So there's another interesting initiative going on in California that you should be aware of, and this is all in relation to the Regional Transportation Plan. I'm not just talking, but I'll put the connection together in a little bit. But the California Road Charge Program, this is actually a program that is it's in a pilot stage right now, and they have people driving around with trackers in their car that tell how many miles they've traveled. And this is a test to see if we can charge per mile traveled rather than per gallon of gas put in your car. Because if a gallon of gas is generating, say 18 cents a gallon for the state, and you put 20 gallons in your car 10 years ago, that would be a little chunk of change and it would all add up. But now, if you're only putting 5 gallons of gas in your car, it's not, the value isn't there, but you're still driving the same amount of miles. So this is this road charge program is a test to see how it would work. Basically, it's a pilot program. So there's various different administrative modules, and it would basically be like a utility bill, like you'd be paying your cable bill or something, and you could do it all online. So they're doing these tests right now. I would venture to guess that sometime in the future, this potentially could be implemented. So moving on to the conditions in Calaveras County, we look at the existing conditions and try to evaluate the needs of what the region needs as far as funding to get the roads into a good state of repair. There's a really good report that's done every 2 years called the Local Roadways Needs Assessment, and it was last done in 2016, so we have pretty current data. So the pavement in Calaveras County, basically this scale that we use is called a pavement condition index. This is 0. This is not even a gravel road, a really crummy gravel road, and this is a brand new road, 100. Basically, this number here, 51, is the average pavement condition index in Calaveras County. It's pretty low. The state average, I think, is 63. So you have lower than average pavement condition in your county. You guys probably feel that every time you're driving around. And the goal is to get that pavement condition index up, and that means rehabilitating the roadways and doing preventative maintenance so they don't get worse. The cost here, I'm sure Mr. Krovitz has gone into this with you guys before, but the cost is significant. So if your pavement is up here and you're doing preventative maintenance, you're paying $2 to $4 a square yard to go out and do some crack sealing and keep your pavement in good condition. Once you get down into this 50 to 70 range, you're paying $15 to $20 a square yard. Now look at the drop down here, $30 to $40 a square yard when you're down in that range, and when your roads are really failing, it's $70 to $100 a square yard. So basically, you're putting more effort, you're rebuilding the road, and it costs more. So preventative maintenance is key, and that's the goal, is to get some funding into the preventative maintenance projects and just keep that cycle going of going around the county and fixing the roads. So bridges, I'm sure you have more than 67 bridges in the county, but this is what the folks who do the local roadway needs assessment were evaluating. The sufficiency rating in the county is actually pretty good at 76, but there is a ton of need. This is $11 million in rehabilitation needs for the bridges, and I'm certain that that number is really low, because yeah, that's just a low number. So I think there's not a lot of data available for the bridges, and so that's why that's showing so low. But there's a big need for bridge rehabilitation. The multimodal needs, we found $35 million worth of projects that have been identified in the region for bicycle and pedestrian improvements. Aviation projects, they basically, the local airport gets about $200,000 over a 20-year period. Not very much money, and that's just for maintaining the existing facilities. They have a separate capital program that doesn't go into this report. The transit improvements, we've identified $20 million in needed transit improvements, and those are just capital improvements. So these are the numbers for that we used for projecting growth in the region, and it's at about 1% a year population growth, and we do a lot of projecting off of a 1% growth for transportation needs. The population in Calaveras County is aging. You can see here the 65 and above in 2010 was 21%. Right now, or in 2040, it's projected to be 35%. So when we're thinking about transportation projects, certainly we need to think about the future and who's going to be using the facilities that we're building. So we think about that. A couple more numbers that were important when we were developing the projects is the percent of people using automobiles. 77% of people in the county drive alone. 11% carpool. 7.1% of people work at home. Bicycle and motorcycles, 0.8%. 2.9% walk for their commute, and 0.3% take public transportation. So some of the goals are to reduce the driving alone folks and increase the transit, walking or biking, carpooling, anything we can do to help reduce the amount of single occupancy vehicle trips. So, into the projects. We've identified over 300 projects in the Regional Transportation Plan. It's about $680 million worth of projects that have been identified. The categories are these here: roadway capital and maintenance, bridge projects, transit capital, operating costs, bicycle and pedestrian projects, and then the airport capital projects. So you'll see some charts in the Regional Transportation Plan draft that you guys have, and this is one of the important ones because it's these are all the funding resources that the region uses to pay for different projects. Many of these programs can only be used for specific types of projects, so we line them all out. But the bottom line here is this column right here is called the short range project list. It's a 1 through 10 year. So this one goes out to 2027. And then the long range project list is from 2028 through 2037. You'll see down at the bottom, the expected revenue in the short range, about $176 million. And then with long range, it's $160 million. Total revenue projected for the 20-year period is about $340 million. How are you going to spend it? On those projects that we have the deficit of $680 million. So you can see there's a gap there. So here's where the gap becomes apparent, and this is where we call it constraining the project lists. So with a regional transportation plan, you're required to have it constrained so you actually know where your revenue is coming from. You can't just say, we're going to build this project, but we have no idea where the revenue is coming from, and put it in your short range list. You have to be able to reasonably assume that that revenue is going to be available. So that's what we do. We line up these two columns are the projected revenue for short and long range, and these are stratified by the different types of projects. And here's the projected cost by mode, stratified from the different types of projects. And then this is the projected revenue, or projected cost minus the projected revenue. And we are constrained at 0 for the short and long terms. Now there are projects in the long-term list that are identified that we don't have, we can't reasonably say that there's going to be revenue available. And that's this list down here. We call them illustrative projects. And that's at $363 million. That number is certainly low because there are a lot of projects in the project list that haven't gotten to the point of being able to develop a cost estimate for the project. So we just have those projects in there as placeholders, but there's no cost associated with it. So this number is likely much higher than $360 million shortfall over the 20-year period. So that's basically the regional transportation plan in a nutshell. Right now, this is the public draft of the plan, and so it is out for public comment. We hopefully will get some comments so we can make it a really good document by the time you guys adopt it. And so we have a 30-day comment period right now on the draft, and then once that comment period closes and we finish with the environmental work, it'll come back to you for adoption, and then you start working with it. And the timing of this is nice because there's another process going on right now for the STIP. The Regional Transportation Improvement Program is being developed by your region, and that will help align the program projects with the Regional Transportation Plan. You can move forward and start taking care of the projects. So that's all I have. If there's any questions about the plan or the process or anything like that, I'm happy to address them.
Council. Any comments?
Not so much a question, but just a comment so that everyone is up to speed on what has happened. The Board of Supervisors has had some initial discussions surrounding the self-help element for the county and trying to find ways to leverage that or how that would work. Those are in just the initial phases at this point, but it's important to note that SB1, the lion's share, is going to go to self-help counties. So if we're going to be actively pursuing those funding sources, we're going to need to be a participant in that, or we're going to be left out to a great degree. So I just want that to everybody to understand the importance of the value of that as they make their comments or their suggestions as we go forward. That it's going to have to be a discussion in this county if we're going to be successful with SB1. Thank you.
Further council comments? Any public comment about the draft presentation this evening?
Yes. I wonder, and you've been doing this study for about a year, you said?
Yeah.
So, in the past 5 years, at least since 2012, our tourism has dropped off about, I bet you, 60 to 70%. And I'm wondering if there's a formula in there that includes tourism, because when in 2007 and 8 and part of 9, the tourism basically tripled the traffic on the roads in this county, and the county swelled because of all of the people coming in from the other areas like the Bay Area and Valley and all over the place to come and recreate here. We lost a lot of that recreation, and but doesn't mean it won't come back. So there was a lot of road use by people that don't even live here for many, many years, and then on just to top it off, the fact that we didn't have the money to be able to go after some of these repairs and damage to our roads, so we get penalized basically. So I think that should be a consideration. I don't know if they consider that or not. And you're saying that you want to put more people on bikes and motorcycles. Bikes would be great if you could find the space on the road. And I know that we have some projects that we'd like to do in the Valley Springs area for sure, and there's room for it. But it is still limited in a lot of the areas around here because of the size of the road and in mountainous areas. And I mean, we see people all the time going on that little space, the white line and the edge of the road between here and Valley Springs, which I think is nuts. I got to tell you, people on bikes trying to make that trek, but they do it. So that's great to get the bike and ped projects, but I think that we should consider the fact where we put them and get the greatest use out of them in a lot of the populated areas where they can actually circulate. Would be great. As far as motorcycles go, turkeys and deer. That's all I can tell you. Turkeys and deer. Is there a breakdown of projects that you guys spelled out in your draft? Is that within the full draft? Okay.
Yeah.
So that'll be online?
Yep.
Okay, that'd be great. And self-help. More taxes. More taxes. More taxes on a very poor county, and the people that live here. I guess you could tax some of the people because some of the people can afford it, but there's a lot of people here that can't afford more taxes, and that's what self-help is. So, I guess the Board of Supervisors can try to do that. Matter of fact, the sooner the better. I think you should try sooner. That way, we just add more on to the pain that's coming. So I think we should be more self-reliant than continue to try to tax the base of folks here. Self-reliant is where I would like to go instead of self-help. Thanks.
If I could respond to one of those comments, there's some studies being done right now. There was one 2 years ago, another one going on right now that Amador County or El Dorado County has sponsored, and it's a recreational tourism study for transportation assets, and it's trying to understand the complexities of recreation travel, because every area is different, but we know that there's a lot of people coming through. They may or may not stop and spend their money in your county, but certainly they're using your facilities. So there's some work being done to try to help figure that out. I was surprised to hear that that tourism has dropped that significantly, but because in other areas heading from the valley to the Sierras, it's gone the opposite. It's gone up. So I'm going to talk to my staff about where we got the numbers of the tourism industry going up, and if we need to, we'll make some adjustments on that.
Any further public comment? Any further council comment? Seeing none, this was an informational item. Dennis, you want
Yes, I just wanted to add in, maybe the helpful source on that would be the Calaveras Visitors Bureau, to see Lisa Bolton on that, see what she has.
I said this was an informational item only. There's no action to be taken. If you have interest in this and would like to make comments, they can be submitted through the COG through September 1st.
Can I just make a comment on what Dennis said there?
Approach the podium.
Thank you. So, you can talk to Visitors Bureau if you'd like, but I think that maybe if you go out and talk to the businesses, because the businesses are the ones that are affected, then that's where you'll find out your information.
Okay. Next agenda item is item number 6, resolution fiscal year 18-1, adopting the unmet transit needs determination and findings report for fiscal year 17-18. Ms. Collins.
Good evening again. This is an annual process required by the Transportation Development Act to identify any unmet transit needs in the jurisdiction that transit service is provided utilizing this funding source. So every year the COG must submit a report to Caltrans and adopt a finding. Our finding must be either whether there are any unmet transit needs or if there's unmet transit needs that are reasonable to meet. The SISTAC, which is the Social Services Transportation Advisory Council, plays a big role in this process throughout the entire year, and they provide a lot of input and review of the needs as well, and helps to make that determination and finding. This year, for the 17-18 fiscal year, we didn't find any unmet transit needs that were reasonable to meet. But SISTAC, there are always, I think, needs that are kind of unmet, but none that are reasonable for public transit to be meeting. So SISTAC still provides some recommendations for transit to consider or continue to look into. One of those major ones is out-of-county transit service to medical uses, and we just had the Delta Gold Line that didn't prove to have enough demand to sustain that service, but that's still definitely kind of an unmet need and a gap that I think SISTAC hopes that transit will continue to work with them to fill that gap. But that's all I have to say about this process, so if the council has any questions for me, I'm happy to answer.
Council. Any public comment? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the unmet transit needs determination and findings report for fiscal year 17-18?
So moved.
Moved by second. Moved by Councilmember Mills, seconded by Councilmember Immunes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Approved 5-0. 6-0. Okay, item number 7, a minute order authorizing the executive director to execute a memorandum of understanding with the Amador Transportation Commission. Ms. Collins.
Thank you. This item is, we approved the systemic safety analysis in our 17 OWP, so this is budgeted. The Amador County Transportation Commission reached out to us to partner on this project because this is one of their priorities for this year as well. So I think it's a good opportunity to achieve some project cost and scope efficiencies and potentially some cost savings for us in the end, and I think it'll be a really good partnership. So I'm just asking for you to approve or direct me to execute an MOU with Amador County Transportation Commission, and they'll oversee the consultant contract, which I'll play a big part in awarding the contract or reviewing the consultant proposals, but Amador County Transportation Commission will have the contractual relationship with the consultant. And then we'll also probably reimburse ACTC for some staff time because they have a GIS person who's 100% GIS, so they do have some, they'll provide some assistance with the data collection that then we won't need to use a consultant for. Happy to answer any questions on this project.
Council? Any public? This is a minute order. Do we have a motion to approve the minute order?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilmember Muniz, seconded by Councilmember Catalano. All those in favor?
Aye.
6-0. Item number 8, a minute order accepting the Angels Camp Main Street Plan final report. Ms. Collins.
Okay. This project started I think the end of 2015, so it's about an 18-month process, and it was a Caltrans grant that we applied for with the City of Angels. I think it was a very successful project, a lot of community input. The City Council last night just approved and adopted the plan, which is a really great success. They seem very excited about the plan. They have a lot of community support. Destination Angels Camp was involved in the development of the plan and supports it as well. So I think this was a great success for the city and the COG, and hopefully we can kind of move that plan forward and start moving forward on some good projects throughout Highway 49, their Main Street, and coordinate with Caltrans when they come through and do projects. It's really important that the city have a plan and a vision in place, so that then we have the opportunity to coordinate and then apply for funding as well. So I'm very excited and happy about the outcome of this project. And I'm just asking the council to kind of accept the plan so that I can close the grant out, and it also can become a planning document of the COG that we can use moving forward with the city.
Any council comment?
Well, anyway, I've been very pleased with the plan. I think it's very thorough, and I was mentioning last night where it breaks down the implementation as well and how to kind of proceed, because sometimes you get the funding to do the plan, but then you don't have the funding to do the plan. You're making the plan, but now you got to actually go out and do it and have the items provided in the city where you're really doing those things and doing the sidewalks and getting all of that done. So it makes me very upbeat about it. I'm very happy about this plan, and I think it'd be great for Angels Camp, and it will help it to have a better appearance, and we'll have way signing downtown, which is excellent, because right now there's a lot of tourists that we lose because they go through town and go, oh, there was the historical district, and I can't turn around. So some plans for that, for parking, those things that are just basic and not really going to be so costly that we can't do them. They really are small things, which will just pick up, it's not going to be like the tourism capital, but it just improves it and makes it easier and draws more tourists, and we'll be much more successful. So I'm very happy about this.
Any public comment?
Yes. I just wanted to say thank you to COG staff and everyone that was involved in this process. I know it was a very long process, as I said last night, and the outreach, both COG and everyone involved did really good at making sure all the input from the community was addressed. And I just would ask the board support, because it's not just Angels Camp, it's the whole corridor. And this will support heading up and down the 449. And it's a great thing to get started in this county.
Thank you.
Having had the opportunity to be there last night, thank you very much. You made me hypersensitive to way signing now, because I'm going through Jackson and Folsom and noticing the parking signs with the arrows in every direction and all of that. But there also was an indication of how portions of this project interlink with others, and that it isn't just a single project. It is a composite of many projects which, working together, can help to make it a better place. So, and I know that parking's always been an issue in Angels Camp, as well as how do we access parking from the downtown area. So some of the options that were being presented would bring a little bit more, a closer tie. When you start to do bump outs, you start to provide places for foot traffic to congregate, that will make it a more viable atmosphere for those businesses that are down there that is missing right now. And we also, in the ACPA, talked about having the ability to have internet connectivity and also phone service in that downtown area and the difficulty with that. So all of this is now working together, if we can push this forward, to make that a better place for an experience for visitors and for the people who live here. So thank you for the effort.
And I just want to thank HUG because, as I was saying, it is the plan is real done and thorough, and really sets us up to know what to do and how to proceed in the future. And I know we as a city council, I'm sure are going to be moving ahead with it, and having staff take on those responsibilities and actually have some of these things accomplished. And I think some of them are simple enough that it wouldn't be 15 years from now, it can be much sooner. Thank you.
Any public comment? Seeing none, this is a motion. Well, come on up.
I am just happy to see that Angels Camp can have a plan and improve their situation. And, as I think the rest of the county should as well have that opportunity. I'm hoping that we aren't forgetting about the school kids when it comes to funding. I would hope that as a part of helping Angels with traffic, getting traffic there and getting people there, in your regional transportation plan, or the plan that you just approved here a few minutes ago, that you'll explore some more cost-effective and innovative partnerships with private nonprofits. Help Angels bring more people in by improving our transportation. So partnerships with private companies such as Uber and Lyft to accommodate last and first mile trips. Now, we'd seen some of this during the fair, where our transit group would truck people up there or bus people up there, and that was pretty successful, wouldn't you say? We were bringing people in from Valley Springs and that area up to the fairgrounds, which would probably never take that trip and go up there, because for many reasons, maybe a lot of the folks just don't drive. But I'm hoping that that we can work together, and like I said, the plan that you just approved, I would hope that there are things in there that would go after these partnerships and encourage Calaveras Transit to explore example partnerships and or initiative conversations with interested and willing entities and further evaluate issues and opportunities. That's how we got the idea of, and thanks to Deborah too, of transporting people using the transit into the fair and special events. Angels Camp has a lot of special events downtown. And so if we can partner up with these nonprofits and private groups, then we could probably be more successful for Angels Camp as well. Thank you.
Any further public comment? Any further council comment? This is a motion to approve the final draft of the Angels Camp Main Street Plan as adopted by the City of Angels last night.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Unides,
Second.
second by Councilmember Fullendorf. All those in favor?
Aye.
6-0. Item number 9, our county report. Mr. Corlitz.
Thank you, Jeff Kravitz, County. Pretty brief report I'll do tonight. I'll start with recovery. All the trees are down and moved out of the burn area. The last few bits of debris are being chipped and hauled to Tuolumne County for waste to energy. And we will begin taking apart and decommissioning the management site down in Wallace. Active construction, the Railroad Flat Bridge is still in construction on its first phase with work on the Wearward intersection in the first half of the new bridge. We've had some interesting discoveries out there from a cultural resources and biological resources perspective, but our monitors are out there working hard. County's in the process of developing a CIP related to SB1 because we know that's coming. What we've tried to do is highlight the highest priority projects that we have in every supervisory district, providing a number and recommendation for what the Public Works Department think are the highest priorities. And we will have that discussion with the board in the near future to prioritize and accept that as a part of the plan, which is one of the requirements of SB1. That's about all I have on the county side. On the transit side, I'll take a brief report on that, if that's all right.
It's actually a separately scheduled item, but if you want to move.
Then let me
forward
take
with it,
questions on county report.
why don't we do that? Are there any questions, Mr. Krovitz, on the county report? All right, if you want to morph into our transit report, we'll go ahead and do that.
Okay. We had a visit a few weeks ago from Calaveras to look at site visits on expenditures and projects that we've completed. It went really well, and I just received a letter thanking us and thanking all of our supporting agencies, COG and Auditor Controller, for a very, very clean report. I will make copies available to our partners on that. It was really nice. Through the Calaveras Grant Program, we also have a bus stop lighting project with a total available funding of about $73,000 for freestanding solar lighting at selected bus stops throughout the county. Begin working on that. As you know, we modified service as of beginning of April. It generally seems to be well received by the passengers, but we do notice that in the first 3 months there's about a 10% reduction in ridership from the previous year. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. We're hoping that's going to bounce back up as we open school and people start getting used to the new routes. You also know the Delta Gold Line was eliminated at the beginning of this month, and the bus that we purchased with the 5311F capital funds for this service will be transferred to another 5311F agency per direction that we received from the state. Staff is currently working on, outside of the budget portion of transit, we're also working on the year-end performance report, which we'll be bringing forward. And last, I wanted to talk about Saturday Hopper. With the elimination of the Gold Line, funding is now available to flush out that funding, and we've been working with the ITC, Angels, and COG to develop efficiencies and contractions that we think will, in the near term, improve the ridership on that tourist route, the Saturday Hopper route, and we're bringing that to you as well. So that's basically our transit report. Questions?
Council.
Maybe you just answered that, but I guess my question was, with the Delta Gold Line, I believe, allocated 3 years of operational assistance with funding. Being we only used a year and a half of that, is that what you're saying, that other money is being used for going into the hopper, or what happens to that other revenue?
Well, the revenue doesn't come in until after the year you expend it.
Okay.
But the revenue that is available is that the Gold Line wasn't entirely funded from one source. It was multiple sources.
Okay.
And so the other sources that were used to fund the program are now available, that we can hopefully make the hopper full.
And we get to keep that bus?
No, we don't.
No?
No.
Okay.
Any further questions for Mr. Krovitz on the transit report?
Thank you.
City report. Mr. Hanhammer.
Thank you. Dave Hannum, City Planner for the City of Angels. I just want to comment, you guys made comments on the Main Street plan. I was going to wait for my turn here at the dais. I just want to thank everybody for that help. It's one plan that was probably the one plan that we did that with the conglomeration of our wayfinding plan and our other plan, I think we were able to put together a solid plan to get some quality projects out of that. In fact, one project we're working on right now is all part of that, which is our CMAC project for our Angels Creek Trail, which includes 2 sidewalk segments along Main Street. So we were already actually under construction for some of those projects that we're doing, which leads me to my next. And I want to thank all the staff and consultants. I think we worked really hard to put a good plan together, and I can't wait to start implementing that one. The second project was our CMAC project, English Creek Trail. Our consultant is surveying right now all the different areas. We were successful with Caltrans to separate the sidewalk project from the trail project. It's all one, but we were able to separate, which will really assist us in the ATP application that we applied for. So if we get the funding, we'll be in a great position. We'll have cleared it environmentally by that point. By the time we get the funding, and we'll be able to go right into construction on that project. So we're looking forward to hopefully getting that funding from the ATP program. The Murphy's Grade Road, I finished the RFP. I'm just having it being reviewed by our city engineer and our city attorney to make sure that it meets all the legalese and the Caltrans regarding letting that out. So hopefully we'll get that on the street here pretty quickly. I can say that we got our first application for the Utica Hotel, starting on their ground floor, their parking, and doing some of their ground floor parking alignment, along with some of the ADA accesses, and I'll be going to the Planning Commission next week. So at least the project's moving forward, and it looks like they're moving forward. So it's a good thing. There's still a lot to do, with that project, but at least it looks like we're kind of bringing it all together. Latest that we have is that the bar portion will probably be open by December. At least that's what they're striving to do. So hopefully we can get that open by Christmas. So that'll be a good thing. The city completed the boundary line adjustment for Dollar General, so hopefully we'll be starting construction on that pretty soon. We are working with Caltrans on the ICE program for Mark Twain Medical. It's kind of put a little bit of a slowdown in that, but hopefully we can get on track and get that project entitled again for the third time, hopefully by September, October, and get that project under construction. Let's see what else. The Murphy's Grade Road, CMAC, Main Street Plan. I think that's about it. So unless there's anything else that I can, if you have any questions on, I'll be happy to answer.
Council, any comments for Mr. Manham? Director Mills.
Something about Best Western?
Oh, Best Western. The Best Western, they bought the property next door to where the old Victorian was. We're hoping that we're trying to work with them through the Visitors Bureau and Destination Angels Camp to kind of see where they're going. Could be a potential of additional rooms. They've got room for it, and so we're working with them and through Destination Angels Camp to see what we can do to help if that's something that they're interested in. So, but they did buy additional property next door, so that's a good sign. So,
all right. Thank you. Great. Thanks. Mr. Baker, the Caltrans report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Long list and a big pile this time. First one, be easy to pick off here. The district is doing emergency relief training down at the district office, and that is August 23rd from 9 to 12. The idea behind emergency relief is the procedures that need to be done when we have things like the storms or fires, to do the short-term repairs to the local roads. Part of it is going to cover Cal OES, and the rest will be FHWA. So that's an awesome opportunity for the agencies. It's the kind of thing that you don't know when you're going to need it, but when you need to know it, you need to know it. And not following the procedures in the short term after a disaster means that you may not get the funding when you need to be reimbursed. So can't state how important that is. Can't overstate it. This is just a heads up. The district got a grant for what we're calling our integrated corridor analysis for Interstate 205, I-5, and 120. Obviously, that's not in Calaveras County, but if you folks drive to the Bay Area sometimes, the idea behind the integrated corridor analysis is simply to integrate with the local agencies so that we make that corridor work as well as possible, to plan what needs to be done there, and also look at things like what happens when there's an accident on the highway and everybody's routed onto the local streets. Do we have ways to coordinate signals to get people moving? So it's really kind of more of a big picture approach to looking at that as a bottleneck for getting out of the district to the Bay Area. We also are hosting our RTPA partnership meeting on August 23rd from 10 to 12, so someone could catch a ride with Amber. It would make her go an hour early if someone wanted to go to the ER training. That's just our opportunity for our management to hear from the executive directors of the RTPAs in the mountain counties, hear what the issues are, and also convey some of the big issues at the district and where the department's going. I'm going to save SB1 for the moment because that's a really long part. We're working on project initiation and what we call project nomination for a whole lot of things. SB1 is giving us money to get things done, and we have a lot of things to get started on. One of those projects is a bridge project. It started out as a bridge rail project. We have a lot of bridges, and one of the asset classes that we have to look at is bridges and the safety of the railings. So we have 4 bridges in Calaveras County that we're looking at. One of them is on the wagon trail. That has been split off as a separate project, and that is the West Cherokee Creek. It's the little white railing bridge between Stallion and Appaloosa. The other project that we're working on, this is in the project initiation stage, is 3 bridges. One is the bridge over the North Fork Calaveras on Highway 12. So as you're leaving town going north towards Valley Springs, it's the one over the river. The other one is the Calaveras Creek Bridge, which you would all recognize. It has the arch with Calaveras cement over the end of it. And the third one is the Angels Creek Bridge, the one that we've kept in Angels Camp, not the one that was relinquished to the city. So all of those bridges started out as proposal to replace the railings. We've been directed to do a bridge alternative or a bridge replacement alternative for all of them based on the ages of the bridges. That doesn't mean that we're necessarily replacing them. They have to look at the feasibility and the cost of how we're going to arrange that. So Obviously, the Calaveras cement arch needs to be addressed and how we look at that bridge. We're really just working on the pit at this point, so it's not like we're doing full in-depth studies or anything, but there will be some outreach to the county on that. Already has been, just to let them know it's coming. The Angels Creek Bridge, the same thing. We're looking at a replacement alternative. Replacements of these bridges will mean they'll have 8-foot shoulders. The Angels Creek Bridge probably would not have 8-foot shoulders. We would look for a design exception for 4-foot shoulders, but we would probably want to include a sidewalk. So that's a complicated problem, and we'll be working with the city to figure out how we're going to approach that. And again, like I said, we don't have a document saying we're going to replace that bridge. We're just looking at that as one of the alternatives. It's kind of hard to replace a railing on a bridge like that, where the bridge is that old, so, and that narrow. We've been getting a lot of calls about the area around West Point with the Dollar General going in. We've been working with the county to try to separate. We get this a lot. People see this thing coming in and they're concerned that there's a school down the road, the kids are all going to walk up, and what's Caltrans going to do? So we generally don't bring what we call intergovernmental review projects, county approval or city approval of development projects to the COG. In this particular case, there's a larger context of how are we going to address what needs to be done for the school, what needs to be done for the community, and whether you can dump that on Dollar General through the project or not. Obviously, that's the county's decision as to where they go with that. But in working with the public when they call us about this, really our concern is that we need to be working on a larger process of getting this community involved in planning for what kind of improvements they want to see. The COG adopted a bike and pedestrian plan, and there are some improvements in the West Point area. Just exactly like with Valley Springs, people need to be going to their electeds. They need to be saying that this is a priority for us to look at safe access to these schools. All of that, planning for that is eligible through our Sustainable Communities and Partnership Planning Grants. It's also eligible as a planning activity through the Active Transportation Program. So, the other thing that has come up every now and then is the corner in Murphy's at the big trees where the signal boxes are, where they, just down from the scales, and we've had some concerns about wanting to do some beautification there. The feedback that I think we need to get across is that it's very hard for the department to work with just a community group. We're perfectly willing to work with a community group if they want to do some improvements there. But typically putting in some kind of landscaping beautification involves some irrigation and maintenance. And we can't make a maintenance agreement with, a private group. We need the county also at the table to be a party to that agreement. Then that doesn't mean that the community group can't do the work, but we need to have that agreement in place. Okay, now SB1. Where do I start? The first, let's just start with the ATP. There's two things going on with the ATP. I'm trying not to be too repetitious with this, but it's been 2 months, so things have changed since I last talked to you. There's two things happening with the ATP in the next fiscal year. The first one is what we're calling the augmentation from cycle 3. So cycle 3 was the last cycle that was funded. The augmentation is simply that there's $100 million more dollars to pass out in cycle 3. So that the deadline from that was August 1st. So hopefully anything that was not awarded in cycle 3 was submitted for that augmentation. The staff recommendations on what was submitted for that call is August 31st, and those recommendations will go to the CTC in October 18th and 19th. There will also be a cycle 4, starting probably February. There'll be the call for projects for that. The ATP is getting $100 million more per year. It was previously funded at $125 million, so that is a pretty sizable increase in the program. So the things that Jeff was talking about, where it's hard for the smaller rural agencies to score the points on the application, that should help to mitigate that to some degree, simply because they'll have to go further down the list to pass out the money. So we're hopeful that that will be a big improvement for our rural counties. We have the very similar thing going on with our transportation planning grants. Our last fiscal year of transportation planning grants had $9.3 million of funding. $25 million per year is being added to the program through SB1. $12.5 million of that is proposed to be formula distribution to the MPOs, not to the smaller RTPAs. The rationale behind that is that the MPOs have complained that they need to comply with SB 375, which requires the sustainable community strategy, so that they need money to work on planning to implement their sustainable community strategies. Regardless, there will still be more money available for grants. $12.5 million added to 9.3 is also a considerable increase in the size of the program. There's also going to be an augmentation cycle for our sustainable communities grants, or sustainable transportation grants, which is the sustainable communities and the partnership. So that will be coming. The call is expected in September. The applications are expected to be due in October 20th. And the awards are expected in December. That one I do not believe is restricted to previous. It is simply, it would be a lot easier to apply with whatever you had last year that didn't get funded. Go through those applications and update them and submit them for that program. There will also be another call for the grant program in this January, February deadline, and awards in May. So that's a lot of money going out in the next year for planning grants, but that's all for planning. Calaveras has done really well in the past. You're going to reach the question of how many grants you can actually manage and produce studies for, but that's a good opportunity. Under SB1, there's also the local streets and roads. I've been hearing some concerns that it's just not that much money, and grumbling about the reporting requirements. Essentially, this is for maintenance of local streets and roads and other uses that the local agencies want to use it for, and it's very similar to what we've called HUDA in the past, highway users tax account. The difference is that the HUDA didn't have the reporting requirements that are in SB1. Everything in SB1, as part of gaining support for increasing gas taxes, you have to make requirements that there's going to be reporting about what this money is actually used for to ensure that it goes to the transportation uses that were intended. We don't have an official state estimate. The forecasts that the CTC is referencing come from, I don't remember the name of the group, but it's CaliforniaCityFinance.com. So the agencies are familiar with these forecasts. For the City of Angels Camp, so one of the issues with this is that tax isn't going to be collected until later this year. Fiscal year 17-18, the HUDA estimate is $98,000 for the City of Angels, and what would come through SB1 is estimated at $23,000. But that's because it's not funded at a full year. The next year, HUDA is for 18-19 is estimated at $100,000, and the SB1 is $69,000. So it's not chump change. It's a considerable increase in what's going to be available. For the county, for 17-18, the estimate is $2.86 million from HUDA, $804,000 from SB1. 18-19, you're going from $308 for just HUDA and $3.08 million to $2.41 million additional under SB1. So that will help. The next one was the partnership program. The partnership program is what we discussed previously with the self-help tax. There's $250 million statewide per year under that program. That is proposed to be a 50-50 match. So, and it's also available for road impact mitigation fees.
Okay, I did clarify
So the bargain that you need to understand with that is that when you are self-help, you're raising a considerable amount of money specifically for that use. So a 50-50 match is a pretty good augmentation to your funds. The road impact fees, typically agencies are looking to leverage to the greatest extent possible. They want to use that for a match and not necessarily at 50-50. So there's some thinking to do about how that's actually going to go down. There are a couple other programs that will be implemented by the department, by Caltrans. I had them here. Okay, $300 million for trade corridors, $250 million for congested corridors. Just off the top of your head, you might think that's not going to be in the foothills so much. We are doing our best to try to make sure that the guidelines for what's considered a congested corridor has a rural component to it. The freight corridors really are likely to be, you know where the freight goes, and we'll do our best on all of that too. So we're working on that internally. Then the last is what's happening with our SHOP program. The first big effort in our SHOP program is what we're calling acceleration. We need, when someone gives you a heap of money and says, go do stuff, well, the first thing you have to do is start at the beginning with projects to get those in the pipe. That takes some time. So, but the money is available. So we need to take projects that are in the pipe and pull them out and accelerate them. That's really what the emphasis is right now. The other big emphasis with our SHOP program is that SB1 looks for expenditures in what we're calling our 4 core areas under SB1. That's pavement, culverts, bridges, and ITS, the electronic aspects of the system. So we're working to get projects accelerated, and at the same time we're working to develop lists of projects to implement, and we're trying to get that going as fast as possible. And I think that's enough. If it isn't, then I'll skip the rest and get it next time. Yep. Questions?
Council?
I think Dennis and I both have the same question. I'll start off with the 4 and 49 corridor intersection. Has there been any talks about the truck pullout at all?
Yes, I talked to Dennis about it.
Okay, so
I 100% appreciate the conversation going on, and I think we talked before about the wide areas on the bypass. Dennis mentioned up by Red Hill Road, there's a really huge area, kind of as you come up the hill on the right, a big open area. And then the other question that I have is coming up from the wagon trail on the long hill coming up to Angels, and it's really got to do with I need to discuss this with traffic operations in more depth, and I've already let them know that this conversation is happening. I think if you put it on the long uphill, number one, the trucks are more likely to actually pull over, because if it's a place that's flatter, they're just, they're going. And then the other is, the biggest benefit probably is because you've followed that vehicle through the wagon trail, you don't know where it's going to go. And so if you do it before you get to the intersection, you get a better benefit from that. On the other hand, there's trucks coming from other directions also, so we may need to look at that.
well, and I think it was a dual. It was passing and for them to actually pull over too and stop and park. So
Okay.
I think at the intersection, more of a parking, because they're blocking. When you want to, say for example, make a right-hand turn down to downtown Angels, they're blocking they make
Okay,
that right,
shoulder.
but then pull over right there, so you can't make that turn.
Before the
clearly.
maintenance station.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then they'll park both sides of the road.
South side.
Yeah, from Starbucks. So that hill, that knoll at Starbucks, when they're coming down the hill, they'll park on the right coming down, and then coming up, they'll park on the opposite side. So if there's a pull out where they can safely pull in and out, if they're gonna go get McDonald's or what have you, as well as the passing lanes. It's a complex.
Parking on the bypass itself, I'm not sure that we can
I don't
we
think
can
that's
get
what's being
to that.
asked.
Yeah.
It's the Copperopolis side, or the side before, as you come
Well,
up to the intersection from
okay,
Copper.
you're right, it's
That's
not
the
the bypass,
pullouts.
it's
That's where they
the-
want the pullouts.
The
They want the
operator,
passing on the bridge, on the bypass side, and then by Red Hill to have passing zones.
yeah,
Because you got a lot of trucks coming southbound from 49 into Angels and then going up the bypass, and if you're stuck behind them, once you hit Spence Ranch, you're not going to get past them until way beyond there.
yeah. I guess I used the wrong word, not the bypass, the expressway. So, they park behind Starbucks. And formally, we can't have pedestrian facilities on an expressway. So kind of, I can ask and do some head scratching. What I really want to do with this is,
What about the planning that Angel's currently doing in that area?
well, that's,
With the expansion of the Frogtown Plaza, is there a way to mimic that, at least for the downhill, mimic that into I think there's a second turn-in
Yes,
that's
there
being
is.
planned,
That's
to maybe use that? I don't
that's
know.
exactly where I'm going, because
Okay,
we're
cool.
working on 2 project initiation documents, one for the roundabouts on 49, and then also with the city for improvements, the larger area improvements. So, especially the parking on 49 fits in the scope of that, and I think we should do our best to try to get that addressed in that process as much as possible, because if you got a flea, you need to find a dog to stick it to, and that may very well be the way to do that. Up at Red Hill may be more of a separate need, but I want to bring that to our project development team. I missed the last meeting, but I think the next one we need to get that in there. So.
And it's more than just Red Hill, it's also that before that last bend, you're coming around at Carson Hill and the trucks are pulling in, or pulling into Carson Hill,
So
or
you-
pulling
okay.
out.
That's a separate,
Because of the blind spot.
that's a separate spot.
I don't know if is it the Red Hill on, like,
Well, we're talking about Red Hill at Highway 4 versus Red Hill at 40.
okay, sorry,
Those are two
two ends of Red Hill, sorry.
And we
Okay,
addressed,
got it.
and just so everybody knows, Carl and I had conversations about 49 and Red Hill, and there is no turn pocket there. And the problem is that the number of cattle trailers and ranches that are back on Red Hill has created so many near misses, and I know we've had some fatalities in that area as well. So it's just a matter of safety, especially for those that are turning left towards the Tuolumne County line on Red Hill Road. That's where the problem is for that location.
Oh, pulling
Addition-
out.
Pardon me?
Pulling out from Red Hill.
Pulling into Red Hill.
Yeah, southbound on 49.
Southbound
turning
on
into
49.
Oh, okay.
There's no turn pocket there, and
Yeah.
those big cattle trailers will be sitting there, and you're coming down that hill at
60.
speed, and you're on them very quickly.
Okay.
And it goes into a little bit of a sweeping turn there to the right.
And it's not visible until the last minute.
No, the other part that I know Commissioner Follendorf and I had talked about this, is that the quarry, because that originally was a quarry, it wasn't really a traffic issue. There was no traffic going in and out of there. Well, now all of a sudden it's a quarry instead of a mine, and so our traffic has exponentially increased between the mine and through Angels Camp. And so suddenly the traffic through the annex area it's back when the talc mine, I remember when the talc mine was operating out there on Red Hill. But we had substantial increases in truck traffic then as well. So at some points, there's going to need to be a discussion about a bypass and maybe finishing the original concept of the bypass there on Greenhorn Creek, how that was to go out. There's only about a half a mile left to getting it from Highway 4 through Greenhorn Creek's main drag there. That was intended originally when that was put in part of the plan. I know that there's political will that people change their minds, but it's only half a mile to getting that finished. So I think that conversation needs to be added into possibly what would that bypass look like to get rid of that annex area where my dad lived for years, as to how to eliminate that very narrow area for a state highway designation and maintain some safety in getting around, especially for trucks in those areas.
Okay. So number one, I have referred the Red Hill Road intersection to traffic safety. I'll follow up with them to make sure that they're the issue is that the volumes there are not going to be huge, but it's going to be based on geometrics, and so they have to go out and look at it and understand exactly what the concerns are. And I may need to do some follow-up with you guys and them to make sure that they,
Well, I think this is the perfect time to reopen the conversation about the bypass, and
Well-
with this coming up.
Well,
I mean, before we really never had a reason other than just the planning aspect of it, and now there's a reason to look at it, like Dennis said.
and I know Dave has mentioned looking at a grant to look at alternatives for how you negotiate the annex, and essentially the Greenhorn Creek connection fell through. The general plan just has a line further out, you know, going from the south of town to the north of town. And what we really need to do come up with is, you know, another way to
Well,
look at that.
I definitely appreciate this conversation, believe me, because if we don't have conversation, then no ideas are presented, nothing really happens. But also, I know that, Dave, you had conversations with Mr. Tryon regarding an option over on that side as well. So there's a lot of options here. We
So-
just need to have those discussions and see what is important and what timelines are we working on, how quickly can we do something, and what is the political will to get that done.
Yeah, so that all falls within potential grant application.
Correct. But thank you for the detailed report out this evening. I was making
Well,
notes here.
It you know, it doesn't come down any harder than it is right now as far as changes, so.
Carl, another question. You mentioned the 4 bridges that are being slated for repair or replacement, and you mentioned the one that's between Appaloosa and Stallion. That's right on our wagon trail project. Is that
Yep.
replacement? If it's being
That's
considered being
that's a
dovetailed,
replacement, yeah.
is that being dovetailed into our preferred alternative too? So we don't do all that replacement and all of a sudden find out we're doing a whole new bridge somewhere else along that same basic route?
My suggestion to the project manager and the PDT, and also in discussing it with Jeff, was that this might be a reason to mildly alter the termini of the phasing. Simply, you know, it's not that far off from where some of the alternatives end, and it might be just a reasonable thing to just change that a little bit to figure out a way to either, I don't know whether you need to combine the projects or not, or simply, you know, just like the pool station project sitting out there, that's a really easy place to connect up to. It already has the 8-foot shoulders and it's ready to go. So there's an opportunity there. And all of these bridges really, especially the Angels Bridge, is an opportunity to partner in the future. We'll be working a long time before we'll be able to to get that bridge replaced, if that's where we're going to go. It's going to take a lot of study.
Any further council questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
Council reports. Councilman
Question. Are we going to be able to agendize in a future meeting for the folks that were having the issue at the school?
With an issue with the,
With the Valley Springs School? Is there some way we can help them?
Yeah, I think I'll take, you know, if direction from the council, if you want to bring this back for discussion, that would be good. I mean, just for your informational purposes, we did actually apply for a grant for planning for that school, and it did get funded. However, as Carl had mentioned, SB1's coming around, and they'll do a new call in September, and, you know, we have a meeting with Jeff and some constituents to consider reapplying for that planning grant. It hasn't been competitive for an active transportation program grant because those grants require significant amount of scope, cost, basically almost like a project study report. And that's why we start off with the planning project to define the project, and then go after the ATP for construction. So we have definitely been involved in that and hear them. You know, that's been a big need.
I don't know as we're ready to do that yet, to have that discussion here. I think we need to wait.
if it's going to be an agendized item, we want to have some sort of either plan being presented or some action available to us. We could do an informational item and highlight, for example, in the regional transportation plan draft that we presented last night. If you look at the plans, there is a specific line item, I believe it's on page 60, that has Valley Springs Elementary
Good, awesome.
explicitly brought out with a near-term time frame. So maybe if nothing else as an information item, we could highlight the specific efforts that have been made, both I think for San Andreas Elementary, Mark Twain Elementary, and Valley Springs Elementary would be appropriate.
Yeah, so it has been a priority, and we've been seeking funding.
Perfect, thank you.
Any further council?
I'd just like to recognize Councilman Calaveras for being here this evening. Thank you, sir. I know that it's taking from your schedule, but appreciate your being here.
Nothing to report.
Nothing to report.
Nothing to report.
I'm good as well. Staff reports. Executive Director 14.1, update on SB Funding 1 program.
Yes, well, I will be brief. Apologies for the duplication. I think Carl and I need to coordinate a little more before these meetings, but if you didn't keep up with him or take good notes, I definitely included quite a bit of detail in my staff report and links to more information that you can find. Just want to let you know, as Dave kind of talked about, worked with the city to resubmit an active transportation program grant for the SB1 ATP augmentation. So that was just submitted for sidewalk gap fill on SR 49, and that one we're hoping is successful because it actually scored pretty well. It was just barely below the funding line in the last round. So, and even CTC, we've talked with them, and they're very positive about that getting funded. So we'll cross our fingers. And then also worked with the San Andreas Elementary School to resubmit their last ATP grant application, which was kind of a unique application. It didn't score as high, so that one will be a stretch. It was for a permanent safety course at their school grounds to get their track resurfaced and do some bicycle and pedestrian education. So we'll see about those. And then also just want to make you aware, and Melissa, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the COG did program some funding in our overall work program for having these funding discussions regarding, sales tax measures. So I just want to let you, know that we do have that funding programmed. If you would like us to assist in having those high-level discussions, we definitely have relationships and partnerships with other regions that either have been successful or haven't been successful in sales tax measures. So we'd be happy to bring other people to the table to do presentations and bring you information.
Councilmember Muniz.
Thank you for the information. That was great. I'm assuming that the figure that you're showing that the county would receive, the $2.5 million, that is not being a self-help county. Do we know what the potential revenue would be if we were a self-help county?
Yeah, so the 2.5 is, like Carl had mentioned, for the streets and roads that the county will get if they just submit a project list and do the standard reporting. The self-help, there's that partnership program. There's $200 million in that. As Carl mentioned, they are right now talking about doing a 50-50 split. So 50% of that funding will be just allocated on formula to counties that either have a sales tax measure or, like he said, they're actually including counties that have a development fee, which our county does have our own fee program, and same with the city. And then 50% will be competitive. And the competitive program I don't know too much about yet, but we're still having workshops, and I'm definitely being a part of that conversation. But I would say, $100 million may sound like a lot, but I think when compared to regions like LA or larger regions that do have sales tax measures and a lot more development fee programs, it'll probably be allocated amongst, your portion of revenue that you're bringing in based on, all the revenue that's being brought in through self-help counties. So our portion would probably be quite low, I would imagine. So the potential, I think, when you look at why you want to be a self-help county, I think that SB1 program, I don't know if I would be leaning on that to bring, that much more. I think, you'd have to consider being a self-help to help sustain, your funding sources more. I don't think it should be the goal of getting into that partnership program pot. Does that make sense? Sorry. Complicating things.
As a point of clarification, the SB1 is slated to bring over $5 billion annually into transportation revenue projects. Over that $5 billion, only $200 million is identified specifically for self-help counties, of which there are already 19, which will be directly competing for that $200 million pot. But the balance of that $5 billion is not tied to being self-help counties. It's being allocated to the SHOP program or to, as Carl had mentioned, the other types of programs that Calaveras has in place already and augmenting those funding sources that we also are part and parcel of receiving those.
Is there a specific formula that determines whether you qualify for self-help or not? And does it have to be sales tax, or can it be another tax revenue?
What has been brought out this evening is that in addition to those counties that have approved through the voter process a self-help tax on their transportation for probably gas taxes or property taxes that go to transportation projects, RIM fees as well are also now qualified as.
Okay, because
locally
initially they
raised
told
money.
us the RIM fees didn't
Originally it was
qualify.
unclear.
Okay.
It has been clarified. Having said that, though, this is a 50-50 match. There are other grant resource programs that we have been successful in the past and have leveraged almost a 90 to 10 match, where we put up 10% and get almost 90% additional grant revenue. So it depends on what program you go after with that local money. The main comment to understand is that local money can be leveraged to bring in a lot more money. And if we can generate it locally or receive it through the state rather than the feds, then we can take state received money to leverage and get federal grant monies as well. So that's the strategies you kind of keep in the back of your mind as you're looking for the project list, as you're looking at grant opportunities, as you're looking at situations like this. Okay, they've got $200 million out here in SB1 money, but as Amber said, the better rationale for becoming a self-help county is to create an ongoing revenue source. This is a 10-year program, SB1, and then it has to be renewed.
Do I understand you're saying to me that you don't think that the additional monies that would be available under self-help would justify us going through the process?
I would not say that.
Okay.
What I would say is it's certainly worth exploring. This county is not a wealthy county and has a number of opportunities for revenue to local government to improve the services to our citizenry. And I think that's where the supervisors, the city council, and ourselves as a COG, where we're looking at opportunities to encourage our respective boards and councils to look at all the options and hopefully make the best decisions possible that our county residents can stomach and improve.
And the last question, would an increase in the TOT earmarked for roads qualify us for self-help?
I'd have to
Carl?
defer to Carl on that one. That's like a RIM fee question right now.
It's just not a true RIM fee.
Well, we already have a RIM fee though.
I think I have to go back and do some more reading on that.
I'm sorry, Carl.
It is one of the kinds of taxes that has been considered self-help in the past. I think the language is voter approved.
Yeah, and I think if it's dedicated to transportation
Yeah.
projects, there's a list, so I think there's potential, but they're still doing workshops to develop the
Yeah.
guidelines.
I mean, Cliff made a good point earlier. There's a lot of people drive through this county that don't stay here, and they're impacting our roads, or stay here occasionally. They're overnighters, weekenders, and they impact our roads too. So,
Yeah, I think with this, the clarity on just having the discussion regarding self-help, what benefits it would bring to us, what kind of guaranteed revenue reserves that we could carry into this to leverage is a critical component. The RIM fees is, in other words, we've already got some of the solutions in place. So it's just a matter of, we may not use it right now. We may use it later. But at least to have that option on the table and not remove it because we haven't had the discussion, that's not a way to go. I think we need to have that discussion and be sure that everybody understands what this value can be for us in the 10-year plan. And so I appreciate, that this doesn't really, we've already been through the process with RIM fees, so it isn't a new process for us. So if we're going to do TOT, we'd have to earmark, we'd have to dedicate a certain portion of it to make it work for transportation. That's not a negative, it's just a matter of having that conversation and being sure everybody agrees to it.
I was wondering also, how does that relate to the city? Now, is that a separate, or is just the city as part of the county? Or would there be a separate?
I think you'd be separate. You're recognized as a separate entity here.
We would have to do our own. We would not benefit from anything that the county does.
That's what I was thinking.
And then there's automatic increases after 2019 built into SB1, correct? Based on the CPI?
Yeah, and it doesn't go away.
No, I understand that, but I'm assuming as each increase comes each year, the
Yes,
allocation
yes.
will be the same,
So
even though
this-
there's more funds?
realize we're talking about 40 pages of
Yeah, I know.
fine
I've
print.
read through it a
But
couple
my understanding is that the structural problem in the gas tax, where it was frozen and it didn't, go up with the CPI, has been addressed through the bill. So
Yeah, and I think where the 10-year comes, where they keep talking about it being a 10 years, that's just where they foresee, the revenues being stable. After that, it's really kind of up in the air whether or not, we'll get much revenue out of the gas tax with all these, efficiencies in cars and then moving on to electric vehicles. So I think that's where that 10-year, comes out of, but it is a long-term tax that doesn't have an end date.
yeah, it was the funding estimate was the 54 billion
Right.
over 10 years.
I have a question. I don't know which one of you can answer it. Was there any further discussion with SB1? I need to be reminded, with disadvantaged communities. So did they ever come up with a clear definition of what that meant? Because being as poor as we are, could we qualify under that?
Boy, we would get into the guidance, because all of these become
Yeah, and it
programs and they
never
all have
been-
separate guidance. My understanding so far was that they're still sticking with Cal Screen as the main tool for that.
Okay.
But just like with the ATP and the other programs we have, the grant program, you can use other criteria and make your arguments for that. But
Okay.
you don't just get to go to a website
Yeah.
and fill out the easy number.
Well, and that discussion I know has come up at some of the workshops. So hopefully they'll at least consider it and maybe have, allow you to have, weigh a little bit more different criteria. So
Because it's been a discussion at
An
the
issue.
meetings I've been at the league. Yeah, that's fine and dandy, but what about the small towns and the ones that aren't producing that revenue?
Yeah, and pollution is not the only measure of whether someone's disadvantaged.
Maybe at some point we want to put this on the agenda to just have a complete discussion about it. I almost feel like we're treading in that way right now. So.
We had a workshop in the past,
Yeah.
it was about 3 years ago now, at Greenhorn Creek, where we actually had a outside consultant come in, present both a list of transportation projects, current revenue options, and what would happen if.
But that was 3 years ago. You
And
have
that
a
was
whole
3
new
years
board
ago,
now.
but we could do that again.
Yeah, that was my suggestion, considering that you have a completely new board here.
yeah, I would be
Get them up to
happy
speed.
to
SB1
continue this
changes the
discussion
picture.
and maybe bring a consultant who has an expertise in this area and bring you that information for a more, in-depth discussion.
And I think even for us who have been on the board during those discussions, a lot has changed in the last.
SB1 changes.
I
at
mean,
all.
it seems to be changing every week. I mean, I'm constantly getting an email. Oh, there's a new update.
Right.
There's a new update. So I know it's not going to be perfect, but just kind of summing up the last since it was passed.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Executive Director, for your update on SB1. Our second staff report here is the Administrative Service Officer, Melissa, on additional items.
Unless the council has any questions.
Okay.
Great. I'm very happy.
All right. Seeing no further questions by the council for our Administrative Services Officer, and seeing no staff report coming from Carly or Melanie, this meeting, then we will go ahead and adjourn till September 6th at 5:30. Thank you.